Hi, I'm Kavitha Bindra from the Yale School of Management. This is Long Life Learning, a podcast where we sit down with thought leaders and innovators to discuss living with inspiration and vitality. This season, we're having conversations about midlife and longevity in ways that inspire purpose and connection in anticipation of our new program, the Experienced Leaders Initiative, also known as ELI. For our second episode, I'm very excited to be speaking with Joanna Lohman. Joanna is a decorated former professional soccer player, including for the U.S. Women's National Team and the Washington Spirit. Today, she's a sought-after global keynote speaker and a highly successful performance coach. She is also a human rights activist, a sport diplomat with the U.S. Department of State, and the author of Raising Tomorrow's Champions. In addition, Joanna is a member of the advisory board for ELI and will be a member of our inaugural cohort. We feel so fortunate to have her voice with us at the decision-making table, as well as here in the studio with us today. Joanna, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. That introduction gives me chills, so I appreciate all the kind words.
Well, thank you so much for being here. The place we like to begin with these interviews is with a concept at the core of ELI, curiosity. When do you feel that you first started embracing a curiosity mindset as a source of growth and discovery in your own life?
The curiosity mindset started for me at a very young age. I think as an athlete, a high-level athlete, which I happened to be when I was a kid, you're always searching for that infinitesimal difference. You're always seeking that personal unlock. And I think I was someone who fell in love with the process of getting better each and every day. And in athletics, that is a very tangible process. You go out, you work on skills, you can move an inch faster, you can go an inch further. And I think I really fell in love with that unlock of what I could become and the athlete that I could potentially be by staying curious and really trying to reach for a different level of performance.
That's fascinating. And I'd love to hear a little bit more about your journey from the world of professional soccer to the myriad accomplishments I listed at the top of this episode, because it sounds like that unlock experience happened with athletics, and then you made a decision to grow in other ways. So can you tell us a little bit about the journey before and after, the moments of transition, and the emotions on either side of this journey?
I would love to share that journey with you all. Being a professional female soccer player in my generation, you really had to confront a lot of challenge, change, adversity, pressure, and instability. I'm a survivor of 2 failed professional leagues in the United States of America. I was one of the last players cut prior to the 2007 Women's World Cup. I tore my ACL in what should have been the best season of my life. I spent years where I was on the bench more than I was in the field. And on average, I made about $15,000 a year playing professional soccer. So it was not a career that provided stability, that provided certainty. I found myself consistently having to pivot, consistently having to travel around the world with a nomadic existence, live out of a bag to really pursue this dream of being a professional athlete. And with that adversity comes a sense of resilience. There comes a sense of deep character because you really identify who you are in a lot of these situations. To give an example, I'm living in Japan on the 27th floor of a high-rise apartment in downtown Tokyo. I'm playing for a team where no one speaks English to me. I'm one of the worst players on the team. There's nothing you can do really in that situation than grow and expand your identity of who you are as an individual. And so I had a lot of identity shaping moments throughout my career. I've had a lot of identity shaping moments throughout my personal journey of coming out, cutting my hair into a mohawk, which many people will see. It's called the Joe Hawk now, and really being a human rights advocate. And so these scenarios of identity expansion, of adversity, was something I could harness for my own success and harness for that transition. Because when I retired from professional soccer, it was the year after I tore my ACL. And tearing my ACL was a fundamental shakeup to who I was, because for a very long time, I defined myself as an athlete. And then you get injured and you're no longer an athlete. And so who are you off the field? What do I contribute to this world without a ball at my feet? And I think I was able to truly and deeply explore who I was as a person off the field. And so when it was time for me to retire in 2019, I knew I had a tremendous amount to contribute to the world that had nothing to do with running fast, jumping high, and being a great athlete. It had to do with who I was on the inside. And I think that was a massive part of my transition because many athletes don't have that experience. Many athletes feel as if their career was taken from them because of injury, because of setback. Luckily, it was my choice. And it was at a point in my life where I felt a deep contentment in my own skin. When I retired, I had a good idea of what I wanted to do, and I had already taken steps towards being that person. And naturally, as one of the first queer athletes in women's professional soccer, I became a professional speaker because as an athlete, one, you have a platform to impact. People want to hear your voice. And two, being one of the first in terms of my identity and being very out in terms of my sexual orientation, people were very interested in my story. And how was I able to show up in the world so authentically when so many of us feel like we have to hide? I was able to share my story on stages, behind microphones, interviews, podcasts, and it was a natural transition into becoming a professional speaker, a performance coach, a leadership coach, because there are so many lessons you learn on the field when it comes to resilience, adversity, teamwork, change management, business optimization that really translate into our world and our lives today. And so really being able to couple my skills and talents on the field with my skills and talents off the field, it's been a natural transition and still has its challenges each and every day.
So it sounds like a lot of that transition was really driven by internal factors and who you are as a person and your character. So I'm curious to hear whether you could have been better supported through external factors or external programs or other inputs. Just curious how that process might have been different if you had received some other types of support.
Absolutely. I would have significantly have benefited from more support in my transition from being a professional athlete into the business world. Unfortunately, when I was an athlete, there were not resources for that. We were struggling to be sustainable as a league. And so resources could not go to athletes and their post-playing career. It just wasn't a reality. And now one of the beautiful things about the NWSL, which is the professional league in the US, is that resources are flowing into athletes in their career and after their career. They're really encouraged to build a business, to build a career while they are playing, because there really is no better time. And when you have that stage and that platform as an active athlete, that is the time to build your brand. Unfortunately, for me, it was more of a lonely process. I didn't have a Yale School of Management ELI program. I didn't have resources around me that were supporting me and uplifting me and helping me to find that identity. I really had to do it on my own. And so the players in this generation are so much more lucky to have these resources around them. And I'm inspired as an advisory board member with ELI to get more women's professional athletes involved in this program and experience, because it will have a major impact on who they become after their career. And as you know, Kavitha, professional athletes are retiring in their mid-30s. You still have a long life to live, and you have a lot of money you need to make. I still have to hustle. I still have to figure out what avenues to pursue, where to put my time and energy. And so a program like this that allows you to dive inward, to really self-reflect, find out who you are, to then look outward to move forward, this is going to be massive for someone like me. It'll also be massive for any professional athlete who is looking to make that transition in the near future.
Thanks so much for sharing that, Joanna. What have you enjoyed most about the transition to the worlds of business, coaching, and diplomacy? And what skills were you happy to find translated most easily from your years as a professional soccer player?
I'm a huge nerd. I went to Penn State University. I majored in business, minored in mathematics, graduated with a 3.98 GPA, four-time academic All-American. Okay, she's not just a pretty face or a dumb jock. I'm a mathlete. And so I have really thrived in the challenge of building bridges between sports into the business environment. I have a really fun speech now. It's called Ignite the Human Behind High Performance, Unlock Your Authentic Excellence, where I actually build a mathematical formula that connects the game of soccer to our current business environment. It's this beautiful umbrella of unlocking human potential. That is something that I have been interested in since a very young age. How do I take that next step where I'm better tomorrow than I am today? How do I consistently unlock different levels of performance of my own identity? Because I think that is really the purpose of life, is to stay curious and to constantly learn and grow. For me, it's the challenge of connection. It's the challenge of building relationships with people that on the surface look very different from me, come from a different background from me, but we all share these commonalities of what we're trying to pursue and do within our careers and personally. It lights me up. Hopefully you can hear it in the way that I speak about it. It really, there's a fire behind my eye. Yeah, there is a passion that I don't think I'll ever be able to put a lid on it, because it's what I'm put on this planet to do.
I really love the concept of the scholar athlete.
Mm-hmm.
That sort of commingling, I think, is really interesting. And sometime we'll have to talk more about that.
I would love that.
So in our first episode with Mark Friedman, we discussed the emergence of this new, incredibly pivotal stage of life, which some people call the third act, or middlescence, or midlife. I'd love to hear about your approach to thinking about the stage of life you're in now, what kind of language you use to describe it.
I would describe this portion of my life as my second act. And with that said, I retired, right? I retired from my primary career. I just did that at an earlier age. And I recently reframed what that retirement was to me, because when I initially retired from professional soccer, I made a point to create distance from the professional athlete version of Joe. I did this for multiple reasons. One, to expand the dimensions of my own identity. I wanted to explore who I was off the field. And two, I felt the need to establish myself in quote unquote corporate America. I wanted to really get the experience off the field that would serve me moving forward. And the interesting and beautiful aspect of this retirement is the more distance I created from being an athlete, it gave me the space to come full circle. And what do I mean by that? I've realized that being an athlete, a female soccer player on the women's national team, the most socially significant team in history, I've realized that I didn't necessarily retire, I refired. That whole idea of refiring puts a positive spin on the next phase of your life, whether that's the third act or the second act. It frames it in a way where you are moving forward just on a different path. And you haven't lost who you are. You're still a leader. You're still a contributor to the community. You're still someone who has a deep level of experience. You're now just manifesting that in a different way on this planet. And, that was really important for me, was that full circle moment where I thought to myself, okay, I'm still that athlete. I'm still that professional soccer player. And now I can marry that with my business skills and really be a double-edged sword.
If I could ask about one of the recurring themes in your public speaking, I'm really interested in this phrase, the best version of you is on the other side of the field. Could you unpack that statement for us a little bit?
I'd love to. The best version of you is on the other side of the field. The best version of you is on the other side of fear, I like to say. And that is a concept of unlocking your own potential requires risk. There is a fraction of a difference between possibility and risk taking, right? We have to be able to take that next step, and we have to be able to come out and stop hiding and really, I think, give ourselves permission to be the person we want to be. That is because society shapes us in ways that consciously and unconsciously force us to hide and fit into boxes that feel comfortable for people. And I think I've had a life where I've been bold enough and brave enough and courageous enough to step outside of the restrictive boxes that society presents as realistic options for identity. I mean, here I am sitting here. I call myself a lesbian, masculine presenting lesbian in the world of America. And it's an interesting journey of the consequences and how we choose to look, right? There are consequences to having a mohawk, to showing up in the world in the way that I do. But I realize now that the way I show up is the way that I feel beautiful. That takes risks. That takes coming out. That takes really pursuing my own authentic excellence, which can come at a cost, and also a huge reward because we are widening the path for those that come behind us. And I think that's been a big part of my career, is redefining what a woman can look like, redefining what a woman could do with her life, how she can show up in the world. And with the purpose of, if anyone walks behind me that may look like me or sound like me, hopefully their path will be a bit more comfortable, right? Hopefully they won't be misgendered or made to feel uncomfortable or discriminated against, because we need people like that to step outside of the boundaries, to step outside of the limits, to really push what we're capable of.
I see such resonance with the journey ELI Fellows are embarking upon of embracing change and moving forward. I also see the temptation to interpret the statement as continually chasing a better version of yourself, something which might evoke a certain degree of self-consciousness in people who think they aren't good enough, especially around sensitive topics like aging. So how do you strike a balance between embracing a limitless mindset and making room for contentment and feeling proud of what you've accomplished?
I'm glad you brought that up. It's an important concept that we're not always chasing. There is no destination. There is no specific outcome that I am trying to reach. It is an orientation. It's a lifestyle of how we show up. And that lifestyle is one of curiosity. That lifestyle is one of growth. And I think a superpower for humans is infinite transformation. The world is constantly changing. We have to change with it. And I think so very often we feel stuck and scared in certain scenarios and in certain identity restrictions when we can give ourselves permission to really unlock our own potential. And so the way that I look at aging is just a constant growing process of really continuing to stay curious and to have that beginner's mindset when it comes to life. And it's a lifestyle of how I want to show up in this world, is to consistently be a better version. It's not with a certain outcome in mind. It's more that the journey is the beautiful process, right? The journey is where the happiness lies. And I want to be able to meet the moment and meet people in the moment with a quiet mind, a sound body, and a big heart. And I think that takes continuous learning and growth to be able to do that. That's the way that I frame it.
I love that it's not about the destination, but about the journey and the orientation. So something that strikes me about the premise of your book, Raising Tomorrow's Champions, is that it's this incredible collection of wisdom meant to empower the next generation, particularly of young women athletes. It's also in some ways a work about the longevity and legacy of our generation. How do you think about your own relationship to legacy, and what role do you want to play in fostering intergenerational connections?
Raising Tomorrow's Champions was a DNA test for me. It was my own version of 23andMe, because I was able to interview over 100 of the greatest soccer players of all time from the women's national team. And I was able to identify themes in our lives that allowed us to reach the greatest of the greats. And we were able to extract lessons from these stories, pairing that with science and data of how can we raise our children to be great at whatever they choose to do. That is the true definition of a champion, is someone who pursues greatness with authenticity and grit. It doesn't have to be a professional soccer player. It's whatever lights them up. Legacy for me now as a parent, I think of it as breathing life into the next generation. I think about it actually as creating space for our youth to grow into whatever version of themselves they choose to be. If I could use a metaphor, it's almost the metaphor of a forest. It is lush. It is biodiverse. Each tree is giving oxygen to the world. And that's how I want to leave my legacy, is building that forest and giving oxygen to the people who are around me so they feel more alive in every step they take in their journey. And it's important for me not to create limiting expectations for my daughter or for the people around me, to really allow that space for the growth and development, and allow that space for them to go through adversity and go through challenge and be able to evolve through that challenge and really harness it as their own success.
What are some stories you'd be willing to share about individuals who you feel are embracing their limitlessness and who are thriving in their second or third act of life?
I would love to share my parents. My parents have always been sources of inspiration for me and the way they supported me throughout my playing career and post-playing career. For instance, my father right now is on a motorcycle trip, an 8-day motorcycle trip by himself, where he is touring upstate New York. To quote my father, he said, I want to challenge my 75-year-old body and mind to see what it can do. And that has been the mindset of my parents from when I was very young. They always challenged themselves. And that has really translated into their third, where my father has his own hobbies. He's a volunteer for Red Cross delivering blood. He's really worked to find his passion outside of his work. He does his motorcycle trips where he's pushing himself physically, mentally, still learning, taking historical trips on these motorcycle rides, learning about the world. And then my mother, who also has propelled herself into her church. She's very active. She's also a part of a think tank in DC called the Brookings Institute. She attends classes there. I have just truly admired their curiosity into their third to consistently learn and grow and discover different dimensions of their own identity. I think it's healthy for them as adults, and it's also healthy for their children, because otherwise you could feel a lot of weight in terms of their happiness revolves around their children and their grandchildren. But my parents have done an unbelievable job of consistently seeking out learning, seeking out new experiences and opportunities that really light them up and give them life.
Well, talk about legacy. I mean, they must be so proud of you and what you're becoming. I know your sister really well, and she's a remarkable human being. Just in terms of the legacy they leave in both of you, they must be so proud of both of you. So congratulations to them on that front as well. When I look at the cornerstones of your work as a speaker and coach, I see values like authentic leadership, unlocking your potential for high performance, and growing from adversity as a catalyst for success. One of the reasons we're so delighted to have you on the ELI Advisory Board is that we see a lot of parallels to the program's key learning principles, such as purpose, connection, and change-making. To that end, I'd love to hear what you find most promising and exciting about partnering with the Yale School of Management. What do you hope ELI Fellows will get out of their time in the program?
I'm buzzing with excitement about being an advisory board member of ELI and part of the first cohort. We have to have an intimate knowledge of who we are. And in the current state of society, we all are so busy. It's like we're running this infinite race to nowhere. And a lot of us do not have time or make time to internally reflect. And so when we get to the end of our career, there's some sort of crises or some sort of paralysis because we have no idea who we are. I think this program is going to allow fellows to really look inside and to work from the inside out and make that impact so they can look out with clarity. There is so much opportunity to make an impact. There is so much opportunity to leave a legacy in a way that makes you feel like you've had an imprint on the planet. And so I'm excited for all of us to be able to take this journey together and to really ask hard questions, reflect, and take a deep dive into our own identity so we can move forward with clarity.
I'm curious to hear more about what sparked your interest in human rights and global activism. I suspect we have many ELI Fellows who have developed an incredible portfolio of skills in one particular line of work or one market sector or one region of the world who are now looking at the years ahead and thinking, how can I make a difference to people beyond my existing social and professional networks? In other words, how did you make the shift from looking outward at what's happening in the world to moving forward with action and partnerships capable of making a difference on a global scale?
Nelson Mandela once said, sport has the power to change the world. And I have always wanted to use sport as a vehicle for social change. So it's been a big part of my career is to travel internationally and be able to use my gift, which is the sport of soccer, the universal language, the most popular sport in the world, to create change in local areas. I've traveled to at least a dozen countries running programs on conflict resolution, on youth development, on child trafficking, and to really see that connection because of sport is something that lights me up. I think we all have a gift, and be able to share that gift with those around you to make an impact is no better feeling. I realize I'm not working with professional soccer players. I realize I'm not working with anyone who has an aspiration to be a professional athlete, but I'm using the sport to make micro changes within their life. Even if they can walk away from a program and understand that their life could have a different trajectory, or their life could have a different path from meeting me, from working with me, from learning from the programs that we run, then we have made a difference. And so my recommendation for anyone who's looking to take their gift internationally is there are so many NGOs, so many nonprofits globally that are looking for volunteers, that are looking for help in translating their message and translating their work and making an impact. And so I think each and every one of us could do that if we're willing to look for it and really put in the effort to find it.
To whatever extent you feel comfortable sharing, I'd love to hear how your journey as a professional athlete and leader has been shaped by your identity as a member of the LGBTQ plus community, and as you referenced quite recently, as a new mother.
Being an out and proud queer athlete has been a huge part of my career. I experienced firsthand the unlock in performance when you feel like you can show up as your whole self to work. And it has been a privilege of mine to feel safe, to feel like I can show up authentically and not only be accepted, but be supported and uplifted for being that person. The greatest compliments I would receive after walking off the field, I'm sweaty, the game's over. It's not, hey, great goal that you scored or great assist. It's thank you for being who you are. And I realized that I was inspiring anyone who might be watching me to take a step into their own truth and to stand in their own power. And when I think about my journey as an LGBTQ community member and now as a parent, I'm still discovering different dimensions of who I am. I think when my wife was pregnant, I could not wrap my head around the idea of the label mom. Like, it just didn't necessarily fit me. It wasn't a descriptor that I ever thought I would use to describe myself. And here I was thinking I was a comfortable, content person who was fully developed in their skin. And it was a reminder that we are constantly evolving. And so now Luna calls me JoJo, and it feels right. I also go by mom. It's the ability to define what a mom can look like, sound like, to sit in that middle space, to sit in that discomfort, because the world is not binary, right? The world doesn't live on the polar opposites. It typically lives right in that gray area. And I think my career has taught me as a female professional athlete and as a queer athlete that I can sit in that middle space. I can sit in that discomfort and sit in there for a long time and still feel comfortable with who I am, because I know, again, I'm showing up in the world in a way that I'm proud of myself and I feel authentic and beautiful.
I'm a solo parent of two daughters. One is a teenager, one is about to be a teenager. And I can tell you that evolution as a parent is going to continue for many years to come. So I'm really excited for you to get to experience that as well. And finally, we love to end these interviews by asking, what books, videos, and other resources should listeners check out next if they want to find out more about what we've discussed today? What's inspiring you these days?
I have one podcast I listen to religiously. It's called Finding Mastery by Dr. Michael Gervais, and he is a high-performance psychologist. So I'm very interested in the psychology behind high performance. I love how the brain works, and he does an incredible job of finding thought leaders, athletes too, who really exemplify high performance and the science behind it. So that's something that I love to listen to. And a book that I always fall back on is James Clear, Atomic Habits. I think it was a book that really was shaping for me in terms of how to create a life that is deliberate and not lived by default, how to do things on purpose with a purpose. And so that book would be one that I would recommend for the audience, Atomic Habits.
Great. Thank you so much, Joanna. It's been such a pleasure talking with you, and you're such an inspiration. Can't wait to keep our conversation going through ELI, which launches in January.
Cannot wait. Can't wait to meet you in person and get up to Yale.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. Long Life Learning is a production of Yale School of Management Executive Education. The podcast is produced by Rebecca Berry and was co-founded by Tracy Sharon, Kristen Sorick-West, Callie Jessup, and me, Kavitha Bindra. Special thanks to the Yale SOM media team for their tech expertise and use of their studio, especially Froylan Cruz, Abraham Texador Sr., Jessica Rogers, Donnie Bristol, and Enoch Reyes. This podcast would not have been possible without help from Ben Madison, Joanne Legler, and many others. Our theme song is How It's All Connected by Jan Perchuk.